Welcome to the Life After Joe Philbin episode of X's and Omar, and there is a little bit of a hop to our step, a little bit of excitement this week.
We should have gotten to the Oklahoma drill, Dan Campbell's Oklahoma drill, and went at it.
That's what we totally should have. We should have jumped in there, because I'm sure the coaching staff would have loved that today.
They would love to put us in the Oklahoma drill.
We are actually just coming from practice. We were just there. We're going to talk all about what the first practice under Dan Campbell was like and what the players and what Coach Campbell had to say after that first practice coming up in a little bit. Of course, Sun-Sentinel Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly. I'm CBS 12 Sports Director Matt Lincoln, and we're going to take a lot of your questions, a lot of your challenges. Just make sure you use the hashtag XOMAR. I know you've got a lot of things on your mind as we enter the bye week and as we have a new coach to talk about. First, though, let's talk about the old coach. Joe Philbin is gone. 1-3, awful loss. 2, 3 really bad losses in a row. Did Joe need to go?
He needed to go because all of the issues that were issues from game one, the victory against Washington, remember when I was telling you to stop complaining about a victory? They continued to persist, and nothing was getting fixed. No changes were being made. The team was a soft team, mentally and physically a soft team. They weren't competing. Dan Campbell even admitted that they were not competing. There's a difference between playing hard and playing to the end and not competing. And I saw no fight from this team. Mm-hmm. I often thought that Joe Philbin was not a leader of men. And when you face adversity and there are challenges and your commitment, your conviction, everything is being challenged and being questioned, you need a leader to step up and lead you out of that bunker hole. Joe Philbin was not that guy.
Why do you think it was specifically so bad this year? Why weren't they so bad, this bad in the past season?
I thought that they quit on Joe Philbin last year at the end of the season. I mean, there's no reason why you had that mile-high drop in the final 6 games. There's no reason why you got embarrassed by the Jets. I thought that they quit on the team. Nobody will say it out loud or admit it, but they didn't want Joe Philbin back. Nice guy, but he wasn't meant to be a head coach. And what does the organization do? They put in a polar opposite of Joe Philbin. Guy not qualified to become a head coach
not
yet.
At all.
However, was he going to be a head coach probably 10 years from now? Yes. Probably. He has that mindset. He has that personality. He has the moxie. He is Tony Sperano reincarnated. The question that we're going to have figure out is, can he coach? Right now, we know he's motivating, man. I remember walking, we saw practice today. We saw the Oklahoma drill. We saw a fight Jarvis Landry against Cedric Thompson. We saw, this is 20 minutes. This is 20 minutes of practice.
20 minutes of practice. The first practice.
The first practice. And then we were walking by the bubble, and you heard loud cheers and ovations and boo, like moans and oh.
Yeah.
It was clearly a more competitive atmosphere, and that's something that Joe Philbin was never able to foster. I had always said, and even on this show, when you have slow starts, the one thing I learned from Tony Sperano did a lot of things bad, but he did a lot of things good, which was problem solving. When Tony Sperano had slow start problems, you know what he did? He changed the first period of practice into not going through the motions, which is what Joe Philbin's team would do. He said, give me a competitive period right at the beginning of practice. 1-on-1s, 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, right at the beginning of practice, and it started to help the team turn around. Joe Philbin never did anything.
Right.
Nothing.
Now, one of the reasons why we talked last week that we didn't think a change could happen this week.
Yeah.
And that was because there wasn't an obvious person on the staff who could take over. So certainly Dan Campbell is not the obvious choice. However, I want to say this. Would you agree that it's a different set of characteristics that make a good coordinator, that make a good head coach? So why are we always looking at coordinators to be the next head coach?
Because that's the next stepping stone for a coach.
But it's a different set of skills.
It is certainly a different set of skills, but ultimately I have to believe that you're going to make my team and players better. You're going to be able to problem solve when you're facing difficult situations like Joe Philbin was facing all season, 3rd and 2. What the hell to do? I run an end around. I run a jet sweep. I pass out of the shotgun, run out of the shotgun. And not to throw shade at Joe Philbin, but when you're facing a difficult issue, a personality, an identity crisis, you've got to have somebody that you believe is going to have the problems and the solutions. Usually it's an offensive coordinator because he's worked his way up the league. He's figured it out. He's seen a lot of people make mistakes, have successes, and, he did his time. Dan Campbell hasn't done his time.
Right.
If you really look at there were only two choices, and there was only one choice, which was Darren Rizzi, who's a special teams coordinator, because clearly you've got the offensive coordinator who should be fired. You got the defensive coordinator who should be fired. Who are you going to name head coach?
Right.
So Darren Rizzi was probably the only candidate. I understand why it was Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is anointed by Bill Parcells. Dan Campbell is on the Bill Parcells tree. Mike Tannenbaum is on the Bill Parcells tree. Dan Campbell brings a lot of the Bill Parcells persona, in your face, gruff, aggressive style, which is exactly what this team's missing. And when you go through a situation where you have a Joe Philbin, I compare him to a saltine cracker without the salt, and you go the opposite spectrum, it just makes sense. Coaches always go the opposite spectrum. Management always goes, if we got a guy too passive, then we're going to get a guy too aggressive. If we got a guy too aggressive, then we're going to get
the other way. Right.
If we got a defensive coach, we're going to get an offensive coach. So this is what you see here.
And that's the one thing that I would worry about with Campbell. We saw it on Monday night, the end of the Lions-Seahawks game. There was a big rule change that people didn't really know that batting the ball out of bounds was a rule.
Dolphins know. Dolphins know because they were victims of it against the Patriots a couple of years ago.
Well, Campbell's a guy, very smart guy, but to think that he knows every single little rule.
That's what you have good staffs for.
Well, you hope that he had. Are we sure this is a good staff that he has there with him?
I used to think it was a good staff. I'm not sure about that anymore.
Well, and he's still trying to figure it out, too. And that's the one thing. Kevin Coyle is still on the staff.
I think he's going to be staying primarily because the defensive players have shown support to him. As bad as the defense has played, and they have played bad, people got to realize the offense is playing worse. Mm-hmm. The offense has to give the defense some help. Now, certainly the defense has to give the offense some help, but you're scoring 14 points a game.
Yeah.
You can't win in the NFL scoring 14 points a game.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense to bring someone from the outside to take over this defense when they don't know the guys. You got to turn it over.
I don't even know who you can promote from inside.
And I don't know. And we're in the same problem that we were talking about with the head coach. Who are you going to promote? And
Absolutely.
I think that, for what it's worth, Campbell doesn't really know anything about defense. So it's not really like he can have some sort of really knowledgeable input there. So he's got to sort of have to rely on Coyle unless he thinks there's someone in-house that can do it better.
Definitely. Let's take some of these questions.
Okay, let's move on, and we'll start off by taking one of our Twitter questions. At Biggest Hobbit, how have your expectations for the Dolphins' 2015 season changed in the last 24 hours?
I think I'm no longer expecting a 10-win team. I thought they had the potential and talent to be a 10-win team. Clearly, I was wrong.
Well, 9-3, they can't make it. That's what they'd have to finish
to
get to 10 wins.
I think realistically, a 500 season, I know Dolphin fans are going, oh, another 500 season is a realistic goal. You win 7 of your final 12 games. I need this team to start playing up to their talent level. I don't know how they're going to get there. I don't know what they're going to do to get there. Dan Campbell thinks they're going to be tough, and just because you say you're going to be tough, it's instantly going to happen. But they need to play with some aggression. They need to play with some fight. Hopefully this coach can inject it, but I realistically think that maybe 8 wins is a possibility for the Dolphins.
Do we believe Mike Tannenbaum when he says that there's a chance Campbell could keep this job?
Absolutely. Everybody let's say Dan Campbell goes out and he wins 8 of his final 12 games. That's pretty
enough.
Good. That's enough. The problem, they gave Todd Bowles serious consideration when he was up for the job with Joe Philbin. And primarily because he had done so well. Not enough consideration. Not enough consideration. The only problem was you couldn't sell him to the fan base. Here's the situation with Dan Campbell. If Dan Campbell can win over the team, win over the fans, win over the media, and he's already starting on you. I see that. I see that already.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's entertaining. I got to admit, he's entertaining. Now, can he coach? If he can do all those things, he could definitely help his cause. But you got to win. You got to win.
I have a short memory. Was just being Aaron Rodgers' offensive coordinator enough to sell Dolphins fans on Joe Philbin?
Yes.
Was that enough? That was enough?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And winning a championship with Green Bay, that was enough.
All right. Let's take our next Twitter question. At PanCanFinFan, is this just the beginning of another rebuild in Miami?
Mike Tannenbaum would like to tell you that it's not, but you're going to need to rebuild your offensive line. You're going to need to rebuild your defensive line. You're going to need to rebuild your linebacking core. Probably going to need to rebuild your secondary. Sounds like a rebuild to me.